Alright lads, Rob here again from Kickback Garage. Now 7 out of 10 jobs that you do on your engine are actually a lot easier if you take the engine out of the frame. So this video here is going to be lambretta maintenance for dummies, how to remove your engine. Grab a sip of coffee and I'll send the scooter over. Right, so the first job you do, if your scooter is actually running, then take it round the block and warm up the gearbox oil. I'll show you why in a second. Right lads, while your engine oil is still warm, you use a 10mm hex key and remove your oil plug. Now this is loose because I'm holding my light on my knee and I've already cracked it open. So the first thing you do is remove this plug, drain out your oil. If you've got some shavings on the magnet like I do here, don't be too alarmed. It's pretty normal. This is about the sort of normal amount of shavings on there. Try your best not to drop that into the oil. As you can see, the oil is quite good. So I'll do that, and then next job is remove the panels. Now that my panels are removed, I need to remove the right hand side floorboard. You don't really need to remove the left hand side, so just to make things simple. Now as you may or may not know, I have the SLUK clip installed on this. If you don't know what that is, then go and have a route around my videos, or maybe I'll even put a link in the corner there where I show you how they work. It makes life a lot easier removing the footboard, so it's just a simple case. If I can get this screwdriver to sit still. So I remove this side of the bridge piece. Come on, you numpty. So that's removed. I like to put all the bits and bobs, all the nuts that I've got that I use, I like to put those in a receptacle. Next job is remove the 2 bolts that hold the strut that supports the left-hand footboard. This is, incidentally, is exactly the same. There's a different angle on it, but it's exactly the same for your series 1, 2 and 3. There you go. So if your footboard has been built properly, then all you need to do now to remove it is remove the screw on the outer footboard strip here. The one in the middle, there's a bigger hole, so that's not actually fastened to the frame strut. It helps if you screw it the correct way round. And then, as you remove the footboard, compress your kickstart lever, just so you can ease it up over there, and voila, that is the footboard removed. While I'm on this side of the scooter, I will now proceed to remove the carburetor. On my particular machine, it's just a simple Jubilee clip. Voila. Now, you don't need to take it off any more than that. That can just hang there. But I am actually swapping out my carb, so I'm going to remove it completely. Once your carb's removed, stick a cloth in your inlet manifold. That's just to prevent shit dropping down into your barrel. Now before I proceed any further, I wipe off the debris off the magnet on the drain plug. And if you're using the older type fibre washer, that isn't the sort of plasticky one that I've got here, then replace that and replace your sump plug. And then remove your oil box so that you don't kick it all over the floor. I will now proceed taking off the exhaust. Now, the Chisel Speed exhaust, probably the easiest exhaust I've ever had to take off. It's pretty genius. These hex nuts, they have a bar at the back that is threaded, so making it really easy to take off, and really easy to fit. Famous last words, eh? There we go. It's just a piece of bar at the back that is threaded where these nuts slot in. Actually means you don't have to try and hold anything on the back there when you're fitting it. So I put these away in my trusty box of bits. Box of bits. What jumped out now? Don't be too vigorous, because other things will drop out. And then I remove the bracket, remove the exhaust from the bracket on the back of the exhaust. Next job for me is remove the springs with my trusty BGM spring removal tool. Voila. And then it should just be a case of giving it a twist and a pull, and it should drop right down there. Just take it off in one piece like that. Voila. Thank you, Chisel Speed, for such a great design. So this is when you have to get a little bit methodical. I like to start at the front of the engine and work my way to the back. Now, the plug cap needs to be removed. Voila. Took it up out of the way. On the other side here on my engine, I have a temperature gauge, so I'm going to have to take that off as well. Temperature gauge removed. Then we unhook the clutch cable. This is easily done if you've got the standard type clutch arm. Then I think it's a 17mm spanner, or you can just use a vice grip. All you have to do is just push it forwards and then release it. It's a little bit tricky because it's at the back here normally. So, but this cassette side case is making life a little bit easier for me in this area. And then I remove the 2 screws to the cable block adjuster and the 2 screws to the gear swivel arm, pivot arm. I just have to find the right bloody tool for the job, which is a 10. Now that the adjuster block is loose and the swivel arm is loose, you have to take off the tie rod bar from your gear lever. So this is a mod that I do on all my scooters. I weld in a stud so that I can use a nut that holds the tie bar down, because those little circlips there, they're a real pain to get to. And this makes removing the engine a lot easier. Right, so the whole gear cable assembly should be loose now, and it is. This is my breather pipe. I will talk about that later in another video. So that's all these cables here loose, except for the rear brake cable. Another top tip here, and this is probably the most annoying thing you have to do when you remove a standard Lambretta engine, and that is you have to remove the rear brake cable. Now I use these. This particular one is from MB, and it's just a case, I think BGM do them too, it's just a case of loosening this nut on the back. I take off the rear pivot nut here, makes this cable loose, but the cable is still in place in the engine. So what you need to do to remove the cable now is actually use a small screwdriver. Just move that out of the way. And you have to remove a top hat that sits in the engine block itself. So that's the rear kit. All the cables taken off the engine itself. Then we move to the other side. Right, the next job to do is you trace the wires out of your stator. Normally it's just the one wire, but on this SIP vape here it's the two cables that come out of here, and they're always the wires are always sort of colour coordinated. And this is another reason to keep your wiring tidy, because it makes dropping the engine a lot easier. So when you do it like I've done it now, I only actually use about 10 minutes, even though this video is probably going to go on forever. Right, at this point, if you're unsure of which cables go to what, then it's a good idea to either label them or simply take a photograph with your mobile phone. Preferably at a couple of different angles, so that you know what you're looking at when the time comes to put these back together again. So that's both the wires from my SIP vape system removed. Tuck those there out of the way, and I'll place my bracket back up under the frame here. Now moving forward on the engine again, you have normally got earth wire on either on your engine block like I have here, normally situated on the back side of the flywheel cowling here. So this one needs to be removed. Put this out the way so that doesn't get snagged when you drop the engine, and I replace the bolt there just so that I know where it is. Right, so do a quick double check, make sure that everything that's actually attached to the engine isn't attached to the engine anymore, and now you can proceed to loosen the engine bar. Now, although I've got a fancy pants mini table jack here, this is quite a recent purchase, about a couple of years ago. This one was pretty expensive, but it can hold up to a ton, so it's a complete overkill for my Lambretta. But you can also use a bit of 2x4, and what you do is you lift up the engine just so that it can free up the engine bolt. So I'll do that first. I'll just give it a little bit of a jack up, just Not too much, just so that it keeps the weight off the engine bolt there. And the best way to release these is actually using a rubber hammer, and you give it a bit of a knock on the one side and then a knock on the other side, just to release the cones that sit in the frame. A rubber hammer. That just releases the cone from the frame. Now, it can be a bit of a pain to get out here. If you're really, really lucky, you can sort of screw it out. I've never had, not one to have any luck, really. Let's see if I can lift it up a little bit. So this is pretty good jammed in the scooter, and they normally like that. If you need to knock it through the scooter, then use something like this. This is some sort of tool contraption that I had earlier. But just make sure that the end is blunt on it, because if you use a screwdriver or something to push it through on the opposite side, you can be really, really unlucky and mar the threads on your engine bolt. So when you've got to this stage here, you use your plank of wood and just lift up the engine slightly so that you can wiggle the engine bar. But because I've got this fancy smancy jack, I can simply remove it from here like this. There we go, and it's released. Put your engine rod somewhere safe, and like I said, if you need to hit the end, these Casa Performance engine rods, they're handy. Have a little hole in the end there, so you can fit some sort of tool in there to knock them out with. But yeah, just be very, very careful that you don't mar the threads on the engine bolt. I'm just going to wind the jack down here. If I didn't have the jack, this is a disadvantage of the jack. If I didn't have the jack, then I could have just eased the whole cylinder with the cylinder head down onto the bench. So I'll ease this puppy down. There you go, it frees away from the cones nicely. Just make sure you don't kill any cables. Come on, you little bugger. There we go. Just put those over there, that's easier. So I'm going to move my jack out of the way. I'm just going to lift up the cylinder head here and just move it out of the way. Now for the key and guide, you'll see that I've still got the rear shock connected, and I do that on purpose. That sort of enables the engine to come down in one piece without canting, and it also keeps the rear end jacked up to a certain degree. So if you use something like a milk crate or something, you can throw that on the back here. I'm obviously going to use my fancy smancy workshop jack. Right, so I've just used the workshop jack and a couple of aluminium blocks here, and that's, in theory, when you loosen the shock bolts, all the weight of the scooter is now on the front of the scooter, so it shouldn't really tip, but it can, and I've seen it happen. So as a sort of side of caution, then I like to just put a milk crate or something on the back of the scooter, so just to prevent that, so that you're 100% safe. Before I take off the shock, I'm going to make sure that all my cables and wires are out of the way. They're off. That's the choke. The electrics are freed. So now it's a case of removing the rear shock. So there you go, that's the engine freed from the frame. And with a little bit of a push and a tug, push it forwards. And as you're pulling out easing out the engine, you can lay it on its side here. And that's it, that's the engine out. The reason why I'm removing the engine this time around is basically because I am fitting the new Mark Broders tuned RT225 that has been ported and tweaked to fit my 62-stroke crankshaft, and I'm quite excited about that. I think it's going to be quite a grunt monster, so stay tuned for the update on that when I get that back on the road. But at the moment, I'm not sure how many spaces I need for the cylinder, so I'm going to have to dry build the top end and order cylinders. And I think Steel Weasel is not going to like this. I think I'm going to go for the PHBH 30 cob. Now, the reason for that really basically is the fact that there is so much jetting information out on the interwebs now. It just makes your life a lot easier trying to find out the best jets, and at least it gives you a really good starting point of how you should jet it when you're running it in. Now, when you're going to take the engine, when you're going to put the engine back into the frame, I do it in exactly the same order that I did now. I work the engine in, lift it up, attach the rear shock, and that means that the back wheel is central, and you simply lift up the cylinder to the engine bar bolt and feed the engine bar bolt, and then it's job's a good one. And the reason why I like to take the engine out when I do like major operations is the fact that you've got a lot better access to it, and instead of mamby-pambing around with the engine in the frame, sometimes it actually saves time. As long as you've got these little neat tricks and gadgets that make engine removal easy, like what I fit on mine, it actually saves you time by taking it out. Anyway, so I hope you like this video. Do the old subscribe and thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, don't forget, grab yourself a t-shirt. Ta-ra!